Just baseball show for Friday, May 2nd. Happy Friday, everybody. Jack McMullen, Aram Layton, and we're doing a mailbag. I'm not going to make Aram harmonize, number one, because he hates it. Number two, because Peter isn't on, and it's less fun to harmonize without Peter because Peter leans into it. But we took some questions. The majority of our questions came from our Discord. And if you're not in our Discord, I highly recommend. It's like the best baseball conversation you could possibly have. The link to join our Discord is in the episode description. We also pulled questions from Instagram and X. This is a fun one. It's loaded up. We got to talk about a debut at the outset. But how are you doing, man? You good?
I'm doing good. It's funny. I think jinxing players right now. I don't believe in the broadcaster jinx, but or the podcaster jinx. But the last quote card we sent out was Paul Skeens' command looks as like ridiculous as ever. He's about to go on a tear, and then he walked three in a row in an inning. Then he gave up three home runs. They were all solo shots, and he maneuvered, but that was fine. And then Chase Petty. I'm all excited previewing his debut and just some of the adjustments and improvements he made going into this year, and he got blasted
Yeah.
by the Cardinals. It's a tough game, man. I think Petty's going to be a good pitcher for a long time, but tough timing there. And then the guy we've been talking about all off season that I've been so excited about in terms of the depth that he provides to the Royals, Noah Cameron. We omit that from the last episode, and he proceeds to go six and a third of one hit ball for the Royals. So I'm off my game right now. I'm trying to lock back in here, but it was awesome to see Noah Cameron do his thing for the Royals, who their pitching situation. It's again another reason why I was a believer in them. I didn't think the offense would be this bad, but the
Yeah.
rotation that they presently have, and then having a guy like Noah Cameron ready in the wings, I think we saw what he's capable of, and just as good of a plug and play guy as you can have.
100%, man. And, it was a weird debut for Noah Cameron. Like, what if I told you he went six and a third of one hit ball and his whip was close to one? Okay, why does that happen for a guy that was pounding the strike zone in the minor leagues? Well, he walked five in his debut and six and a third, but nobody was hitting him. And Noah Cameron, five starts with AAA Omaha. 22 and a third innings. He struck out 27 and walked eight. He had a 3.22 ERA. And this guy was one of the best pitching prospects in the Royals system last year, number one, but in the American League too. 128 and two thirds innings at a 3.08 ERA last year between 16 starts in Double A and nine starts in Triple A. And to end the year last year in Triple A, he was nails.
Oh
Nine
yeah.
starts, 2.32 ERA, and in 54 and a third innings, not only did he only allow 44 hits, but he punched out 62 and walked 11. Noah Cameron is a guy that not a lot of people were aware of when it came to pitching prospects in a macro. Understandably so. Chase Petty got a lot of the love on Wednesday when it came to a debut. Noah Cameron's was number one, better. Number two, probably a guy that should be viewed in a similar light to Chase Petty at this point.
Yeah, two totally different pitchers, and yeah, sure, Petty has a higher ceiling, but in terms of value, I think the floor with where it is with Cameron, you could say that these two guys are not too far off from each other. Petty's a top 100 guy, but Cameron was number six in our Royals rankings in that system, and it's not a bad system at all. The shift for him too, he went from potential depth arm to solid back end starter when his fastball jumped from 91 to 92.5. He also got much more ride on it as well, was able to eliminate some horizontal action. So that made the fastball at least play like an average pitch. And then he's always had the good secondaries, but all of those ticked up a little bit too. So you have this plus changeup, which was really looking good in that big league debut, a cutter that he added that looks like it can be an above average pitch. And then he's got the curveball as well. So your fastball ticks up and you add a cutter, you're probably going to find some success, especially when you have above average command. And I think Cameron is a perfect innings eating type of lefty that, he'll get his run, I think, for now, because the rotation is pretty full. It's going to be when needed. But I think
Yep.
this is a guy that you're looking at, especially just going into next year and beyond, that can be that innings eating left-handed pitcher for you that just consistently can give you solid outings.
And man, he's kind of a prototype of what you want in a number five starter. Okay,
Yep.
he's left-handed. Okay, there's a bunch of different pitches. He's 6'3", 220. He looks the part. He looks durable. He pitches clean. The mechanics are easy and free flowing. There's a lot to like with Noah Cameron. And you're right. Like, the offense for Kansas City needs to get their tail ends in gear, but at the end of the day, their pitching can help get them there. And Bobby Witt Jr. is still Bobby Witt Jr. So you have a couple of offensive pieces step up. Listen, Kansas City got to the American League Division Series last year because of Bobby Witten pitching. Who's to say
Yeah,
they can't do it again?
absolutely. And I'd imagine that this time around, they'll address the offense come deadline time and trying to make some moves that way as well. But also, we talked about it the other episode. Jack Caglianone's starting to play a little outfield, so
Yep.
he might be getting primed up potentially to get up there and help that team in the second half too.
Yep. All right, we are going to get to the mailbag in a moment, but before that, I do want to tell you about our friends at Game Time because you are going to a whole bunch of events in Miami. I'm going to Marlins A's and I'm going to Marlins Dodgers next week, but I am vocationally obligated to be in attendance for those. If you go, chances are you could be using a secondary ticket market, and that could be Game Time. You're also going to check out a practice session of the Miami Grand Prix. It sounds like a little
Yep.
Formula One for our guy Leighton, and then he's going to a sick concert, Rufus Du Sol. So it's going to be a jam-packed weekend in Miami for Aram, and I'm sure that he's using Game Time, the official ticketing partner of the Just Baseball show. So many things that are great on there. You get last minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, list goes on. Game Time Picks makes last minute ticket buying easier than ever. Highlights the best deals in the stadium. You get zone deals. You save even more when you choose a section and you let Game Time choose the seats. There's an all in pricing toggle feature. You get seat views. And how about the lowest price guarantee? If you don't find that Game Time has the lowest price, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code JUSTBASEBALL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code JUSTBASEBALL, JUSTBASEBALL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I was walking around my neighborhood in Miami and I saw that Mercedes had their pop up like a block away from my apartment. And I was just like, I was thinking, oh man, I want to try and get out there. Maybe Lewis Hamilton's? No, Lewis Hamilton's not there. Are you rooting
He's
for
not there.
anybody in particular or what?
I was going to ask you, I don't know anything about F1. I'm not really a huge F1 fan.
Ferrari, the two most attractive dudes in racing, Charles
Oh,
Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton.
yeah.
Ferrari.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for in my favorite athlete. I
That's
don't
what I
know.
look
I don't
for.
I've I've been ready to just not like it. So I'm excited for it, but it's not something that generally I'd imagine myself enjoying. So I'm gonna I'll give you my feedback on my F1 experience when we get back on here again. But just knowing myself, I
Yeah.
just feel like it's not it's not primed for me.
I did the COVID Drive to Survive thing that I know a lot of other people did, where they popped on the Netflix doc and was like, wow, these guys really aren't too far from fighter pilots, huh? And I thought that was really cool,
Yeah.
where they are kind of mentally and emotionally prepared to die in the car if they need to, and if that means winning. And I just thought that was the most badass thing ever.
I'll go in there with that perspective.
Okay, so there we go. But let's go to the mailbag, and it's not as dire as Formula One racing. Let's start with a great question from Discord. This is from Shawn Donahghue, Oak Park Stand Up. Jack has mentioned that Blake Snell and Max Muncy, while good, are not his tempo for enjoying baseball. Who are some other objectively good players that aren't your cup of tea? Conversely, who are some personal favorites of yours that the aesthetic outmatches the production? I'm going to pencil in Michael Garcia for you, Peter. That was a great shout on Discord. But I have been kind of vocal about that. Like Muncy, and I know Muncy just hit his first homer of the year against the Marlins actually on Wednesday. And it was a shot. It was 433 feet, dead center. It was great. That's what Muncy can do. Muncy has been an 850 OPS guy over the last few years. But my thing about Muncy is when the going is tough, the only endearing quality about his game is he sees a bunch of pitches.
Yep.
And he's just a pain in a pitcher's rear end. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. It's not the most fun brand of baseball to watch for me. Snell is the pitching equivalent where, okay, he's going to strike out 10. Okay, he's going to be an all-star, but he's also walking more people than anybody in the National League when he won that Cy Young with San Diego. And he's not pitching into the eighth inning. And he knew that. As soon as he threw his no-hitter, his post game, he let loose. It was like, look at me throwing the ninth inning. Guess who
Yeah.
hasn't done it since? You know what I mean? It's not that typical prototype of the things that I like seeing, where it's slap the ball around the ballpark, hit it out of the ballpark occasionally, but just be a really athletic hitter and defender. And then pitchers, I see so much value in pitching into the seventh and eighth inning, and like we just don't get that from Snell. So, do you have anybody that kind of jumps out like that?
Man, you're just born in the wrong generation, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was
Man,
born 30 years too late, huh? I need Steve
uh,
Carlton throwing every fourth day.
yep, the 140 pitches. No, I'm with you though. There are times where like, I like to watch a good sequence, of a pitcher setting up pitches with something else. And there is something to be said about just being so nasty that you can just kind of go with whatever works and miss badly with two pitches, then walk back in and make a guy miss with three different ones after that. But there is something about sequencing and layering things and making it, a really satisfying watch. And I don't know if Snell often does that. So I can hear that one. I don't. I try to think about it in terms of like I don't get as like bothered by specific play types. Although, and I know this might not be popular. I know you probably mentioned it. Like ONeal Cruz when he connects is so fun to watch,
Yeah,
but he's a pretty frustrating watch at bats wise. Like I don't. There's times where guys that take the same swings at the same pitches
yeah.
over and over and over again can get kind of frustrating. Ezekiel Tovar is kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Yeah.
always loved him as a prospect. I would love him on my team. Don't get me wrong. But high chase, limited change and adjustment to it, and the same misses over and over and over again can kind of drive me crazy. So I would probably say him. I love watching him defend,
Yeah.
but he's probably in that conversation as well. It's just like, I mean, like I don't like watching guys just give away at bats like that,
Yeah.
and it can get frustrating because you know how talented they are.
Sure, and I'm sure the defense doesn't help O'Neill Cruz's case either, right? Like the
No,
all
that
around
that
game,
that's a frustrating watch.
it's frustrating. So I'm sure that kind of aids in it. To your point about the approach, and I love watching this guy when he's hot, but when he's not, we saw it at the beginning of the year. Rafi Devers gets to be a frustrating watch for me sometimes because it's like,
Yeah,
oh, you're swinging at that pitch at your neck again. And when
yeah,
he's right, he's going to
he's
hit it
hitting
out
them
of the
out.
ballpark. And he's the
Yeah,
only one that can do that in Major League Baseball. But when it's not right and he's not hitting that pitch, he's still swinging at that pitch. And
yeah.
it just kind of makes me go gray a little bit quicker when I watch that when the going gets rough for Rafi.
Yeah, and then pitching like there's no one that like in particular. I'll
No one
be
really like I looked around at just the walk leaders like Jose Soriano, but he's not objectively good enough for this, I don't think, even though he was good last year. Cease when
Dylan
he's
Cease can
not
be
going right,
frustrating.
he can be frustrating. Cease can be, but that's really it for me, man.
Yeah, there's not really too many guys on the pitching front that like drive me insane to watch.
Pre pre pitch clock Bassett. I still wrote down Bassett because Bassett led the league in shakes and it killed me. I couldn't watch a Bassett start.
Pre pitch clock back. I didn't even realize that to be honest.
It was
He strikes me as
horrible,
a guy
dude.
that would work slow.
He worked so slow and he was shaking 4 or 5 times. He made a wild card start against the Mets, and it was actually pretty well documented. I think David Cohn was calling that game. That was the Musgrove game, I think. The
The
Vaseline on the ears
Vaseline game.
or red hot on the ears. Bassett was
Hmm.
on the other side, and they were like, this guy cannot stop shaking off his catcher. This is so hard to watch.
Yeah, that'll drive me insane too. That you can just get
Insane.
locked into that department for that. But yeah, honestly, on the in the hitting side, it's really just there's stretches where Jazz Chisholm, like he's
Sure.
so fun to watch and do his thing. But then there's stretches where he frustrates me, like Randy Arozarena in the postseason,
Yeah.
so awesome. But then I think that's what makes it frustrating sometimes, where you have these stretches where it's like, my gosh, are you even like locked in right now? How much do you care about the results in May,
Yeah.
maybe compared to October? But there, in terms of just watching guys play, I don't think anybody really like gets me that bothered because
Yeah.
they're all so talented in their own ways.
Is there anybody that you love that might be punching above what they actually weigh in at in your mind? Like for me, it's very clear I have a Gore bias. I think McKenzie Gore is must watch every time he's on the mound, and it hasn't really clicked for him until this year.
Yeah, I mean Gore. Yeah, that's funny because you were excited to watch Gore pitch at points where I'm like, why are you excited to watch Gore
It's
pitch?
awesome when it like what if it all clicks today?
Yeah. And you're getting rewarded now, I think
Yeah,
without a doubt. I really do enjoy watching Drew Rasmussen pitch.
cool. Hey, that's a good shout for
Just a
this.
random one because like he fills up the zone.
Yeah.
And there's something about like when I can get behind the narrative too. Like, this guy's had 3 elbow surgeries, but even before that, when he's dialed in, I mean, I think he can be darn right unhittable. And Rasmussen's just a guy that I just don't think gets a lot of love or shine, and is pretty dominant despite operating at, I think pretty heavy slider usage and two fastballs. Like that's the majority of what he's doing is slider and two fastballs. So that part is fun for me. Kind of quickly here, but he might just be too good at this point. Tyler McGill has
Tyler
been
McGill, I
really fun to
understand.
watch for me. Like he is just
An
disgusting. And
extension.
I like seeing how overwhelming it is for hitters.
Hmm.
Just seeing how rushed they are and just how uncomfortable those ABs can be for them.
Yeah.
And then on the hitting front, like I'm trying to think of like an underrated guy that I enjoy watching kind of go about their business
So
because
there's one guy for me.
who is that?
Stott. I love
Interesting.
Stott. I'm kind of addicted to the way he plays the game. He plays
He's
it at
off to a
such a
phenomenal start this
he's
year.
off to a great start, but he plays the game at such a smart level. That guy's a step ahead of every single pitch. Defensively, he's awesome. He's working quality ABs. I kind of love him at the top of that lineup right now, and Schwarber in the 4 spot. There's something about watching Stott play that just has me in love with the way he goes about his business.
You know what? You jogs my answer too then, and he's honestly just objectively good. But uh, Zach Neto,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
that's a guy that was one of my favorite players out of the draft, and then as a prospect, even though he wasn't a prospect very long, and then just as just a hitting guy, just appreciating that he went from big leg kick to now kind of eliminating that and still just being so good in the box. It's a fun blend of like hitting and now adding a little bit of power. He plays so hard though. I like again another really heady player that does all the little things well.
Yeah.
That's probably another one of the guys for me that I've said it since last year of the fact that I think he's probably one of the most underrated players in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
And I stand by it now. I still think he is. And he's a blast to watch, I think, go about his business as well. And it's just consistently good ABs.
I have some funny, just deep cut bullpen arms, but I was last year, like I was watching a lot of Randy Rodriguez in West Coast games, and I'm glad that I'm being rewarded for that now. Same deal with Justin Martinez. I was watching a lot of Justin
Justin
Martinez.
Martinez is just
Yeah, he's too good for this conversation. I think Randy Rodriguez still does fit this conversation, but I was watching those guys last year when I was like getting back from Indianapolis games, and I was just turning on a West Coast game in the 7th inning, and I was like, these guys are awesome, and no one knows about them because they don't play for the Yankees.
I was listening to your radio call when he came in out of the pen for the
Martinez,
Marlins. Yeah, and
it's a 90-mile-an-hour knuckleball.
I
It's
could
fascinating.
I almost felt like you were ready to just go into podcast mode and just start breaking down Justin Martinez just to like explain to the listener how ridiculous it is
Right.
what you were seeing in that moment. It's just I think otherworldly what he's
Otherworldly.
able to do. Like it's different, and he's real. It's just for him. It's just his biggest competition is just himself in there. When he's
Absolutely.
executing, I don't really know what you could do about it. I don't think there's really anything you can do about it.
I don't think you can do much at all. Okay, let's go over to the American League West here. Our next question is from Ryan on Discord. If the Astros fail to make the playoffs this season, what direction do they head in? After almost a decade of success, it's probably hard to push the reset button. Could you guys see them doing that? I think the short answer is yes. I could absolutely see them doing that.
Here's the thing, because I think this is such a fascinating conversation. How? Because here's where you're tied up. You just gave Christian Walker 3 years, 60 million. You could, I guess, theoretically move off of that deal, but you have Altuve locked up until 2029. You have, I think, Josh Hader locked up until 2028. And I just don't know if how movable. Also, by the way, you've got Jordan under contract until 2028 as well.
Yeah.
You're not trading Jordan. You're not trading, of course, you're not trading Altuve.
Right.
And I don't know if can you move that Hater deal?
Yes.
potentially.
I think
I
you
think,
can I think you can clear cut move that Hater deal to a big market.
yeah. So I don't know if I see a reset, like complete reset. I do see a restructure because I still think they're too good and talented to justify like total rebuild, but they're also still too far away to say, okay, we can just go sign a couple players because you know that they love to operate under, the threshold. And if you look at kind of the money that they may end up having to take on next year, like all of their players are entering arbitration. Like
Yeah.
almost all of them are either entering ARB one or getting to ARB two, and they're going to be much more expensive. Like Isaac Paredes is going to be in ARB three. Dubon's going to be in ARB four because he's a Super two guy. Jeremy Pena is going to hit ARB two, so he's going to get a lot more expensive. This is the year in 2026 is the year where Jordan his contract goes up by $11 million from 15 to 26.
Yeah.
Really from 16 to 27, I should say. And then like McCormick, ARB three, Myers, ARB two, like they have a lot of upticks in ARB. So they'd have to clear out a little bit there. But I don't know if I see a full-fledged reset. You're not gonna be able to move the Javier deal. That's 21 million in 2026 and 21 million in 2027. What do you do?
I think you have the pieces around to justify a restructuring. I'm with you.
Hmm.
So retool might not be the right way to go about this, but I think that you saw the beginning of restructuring this year, right? No
Yes.
Bregman, no Tucker. Okay, how do you replace Bregman and Tucker? Well, you grab Walker by paying him, and you grab Paredes and Cam Smith by trading Tucker for them. So I could see a world, and Hader. Not only is that deal movable in my mind, it's movable for a legit prospect. You're
Yeah.
telling me you can get 3 more years after this of one of the best relievers in baseball, and even in his disappointing years, he's still a top 10 closer in the game.
And
I
he's
think
been phenomenal out of the gate this year.
he's been great. I think that you can attack an offensive deficiency with a pre-arb big leaguer for Josh Hader. I
Yeah.
think about Boston. If Boston needs a closer, Hader and a prospect for Wilyer Abreu, like that's absolutely doable.
Well, now Willier might just be untouchable all of a sudden.
Wilyer, I think Wilyer's untouchable, and we'll
I'm going to
get to
be talking
Wilyer.
about Willier in a moment, but I understand what
Yeah,
you're saying. Like it could be Hader and something for even just a solid prospect in the upper minors or
yeah.
something that fits, what they need.
If they want to retool a little
Coincidence.
bit, man, like what about Hader for Rafaela? You know what I mean? Hader for
Yeah,
Rafaela and a prospect, something
that would
like that.
actually fit their needs. That would actually make a lot of sense. And you're taking on long-term money, so to speak, but it's helping you in the short term to clear up some money. And I think that's going to be the priorities. They're going to need to clear up a little bit there too, because Yiner's going to hit his first year of ARB as well.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think you trade a Christian Walker. I don't think you necessarily need to.
I don't think you need to. I think we'll see a continuous effort to restructure from Dana
Yeah.
Brown.
Yeah, and you move like a Dubon, who's going to it adds up, right? You move a McCormick, who might be playing pretty well. I think if you're on track to fall short, yeah, you trim off some of these pieces, but you still have a pretty good infrastructure here, where you hope Javier comes back and is close to what he was. Hunter Brown looks like he's one of the better young pitchers in the game now.
Yeah, yeah.
Eric Getty, when healthy, is still really solid. So you have some pieces. Luis Garcia hopefully comes back healthy and looks like he can help. But
And McCullers is back. Welcome
and
back,
McCullers is
Lance.
back, and he's back. So if you clear up some money, you can spend there. I do think it's a retooling though for sure, where like an adjustment where we're going to see it look a little different. But I don't think you necessarily need to tear it down or totally reset, right? Like
Yeah.
Pena looks like he's taking a step forward this year. There's some pieces to I still think be excited about. The Cam Smith addition going into next year, like that's a guy that now you're looking at and saying maybe he can take a step closer to being an all-star this year since he's
Of course.
really developing at the big league level this year. There's a lot of wrinkles in that, but I think it's obvious that Framber's gone after. They're probably going to trade Framber too, and remember you're going to get something there too.
At the
So
deadline, I bet you can move Fromber. Yeah.
100%. And you'll get something decent for him, whether it's big league pieces or not, bolster up that farm, and then you can maneuver from there. So I think we're going to see a variation of what we saw this past offseason where they made some subtractions, but they were still with the short term and long term in mind, and they still made some signings to help the ball club as well. And
Yeah.
I think that's where we're going to see them kind of just shuffle around a little bit. But I don't think it's a full teardown where we see them trade some of their controllable guys.
I like that. I like that take. Okay, let's go to the Yankees here. This one is a question from Chase on Discord. What should the Yankees do when Giancarlo Stanton comes back? Ben Rice has outplayed his expectations and deserves a spot in the lineup. Do the Yankees platoon Rice against right-handers and Stanton against left-handers, or should they force someone else out of the lineup? So there's a wrinkle to this. Stanton was just moved to the 60-day injured list with this elbow issue that's going on in both elbows.
Yep.
It could be a season ender, and we don't have to bridge this conversation because Rice could just play first base next year and you let Goldschmidt walk, and then Stanton's the DH when he's back healthy. But if there is a world where Stanton does come back and his elbows feel fine and he's hitting at the end of this year, how do you adjust this lineup to account for Ben Rice and Giancarlo Stanton? They are going to be in a real pickle.
Yep. Yeah. And it almost makes me feel like you could be a little bit more comfortable with going the safer route and maybe undergoing whatever procedure he may need, or taking more recovery time because you have a Ben Rice. But I do think the more obvious answer is Giancarlo taking those short platoon ABs. One, that will help him stay healthy and available, hopefully. Two, Ben Rice hasn't been good left on left. But the problem is a roster spot, a 26-man spot, to a guy that can't play defense and is only going to, I guess, hit lefties and maybe select few spot starts in against righties. Is that a justified roster spot? Because think about the bench right now. It's JC Escara, who's your backup catcher.
Yeah.
It's Oswald Peraza, who utility infielder. It's Pablo Reyes, who's just full-fledged utility player. And it's Jason Dominguez, depending on the day, right? Or Oswaldo Cabrera, whatever, however you want to maneuver it. That to me is it's hard to justify booting a guy out of there. Like it'd be Pablo Reyes, I'm sure. But then Cabrera, I guess, is relegated to the bench, and you go that way. I guess you can still make it work and kind of eat the one bench spot. But it's a weird role, a short platoon DH, and I guess like late inning
for a guy that you're paying north of $20 million.
And that's why you got to put him in some role.
Yeah.
But it almost seems like if it's 50-50 for him to be able to get through the season anyways, if it's both elbows and whatever, like
yeah,
it may just make sense to try to fix that issue so that he can be fully available next year. Because you imagine Goldschmidt probably won't be in the fold next year. Rice can then play first base, and then you've got the DH spot open again. But I guess for now, if you're trying to get through this year, it's super pinch hitter and short platoon DH is probably the only way to go about it. And maybe that helps Giancarlo stay healthy. And if you look at like 2023, he had a 940 OPS against left-handed pitching. I know last year it wasn't, he didn't have splits in that favor. He's actually a little bit better against right-handed pitching. But I imagine usually as guys age, big power hitters, you remember Pujols even at the end there too. Like he was still able to get his against lefties.
Lefty master Pujols was, yeah.
So that might be the path. And just kind of filling that like Pujols type of role where if it's a lefty on the bump, he's in the lineup every single time. And I guess that could still be 2-3 starts a week.
Yeah, I would think so. And Pujols, I'm going to pull up these numbers, but it could be 2-3 starts a week. My thought is, from a Yankee fan perspective, this is not a great conversation to be having about Giancarlo Stanton, right? Oh, we have to get his bat in the lineup. How do we get his bat in the lineup? But this is an exceptional Yankee macro conversation to be having.
Yes.
Because you found a guy. You found one of the better power hitters in Major League Baseball to this point in Ben Rice. Be happy about that. That's really, really exciting stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And, if something happens, somebody goes down, the thing about Ben Rice that's interesting is he can catch in an emergency. I think he's caught a game this year. He's going to play a little first, too. So at that point as well, God forbid Goldie goes down or whatever, then immediately you have an opportunity to plug him in and play him more. So even if he is playing short platoon, he is the guy that ultimately can slide right into that full-time DH role because then Ben Rice can fill in at first base. I'm curious to see what they would do if Austin Wells went down.
Yeah.
Like knock on wood, like would you then have Rice catch a little bit and split time with the Scara? Would you like how would you go about that? I hopefully don't have to have that answered,
Yeah.
but that is just an interesting wrinkle in it too. Like Rice is not if Rice was stuck as a DH only as well, then it's a really difficult conversation. But at least Rice can be a potential alternate for two other positions too.
Yeah, no doubt. By the way, Albert Pujols in 2021, between the Angels and the Dodgers against righties, 139 at bats at a 499 OPS. Against lefties, 136 at bats at a 939 OPS. That was the dream.
That's crazy. And then in what 2022, his final year, he slashed 351, 405, 746 against lefties in 131 plate appearances.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
it is
13
next
home
level.
runs in 131 plate appearances.
It is next level. Okay, let's go to our next question here. This one is regarding MLB breakouts. And the question comes to us from Durf on Discord. Who is your favorite post hype breakout this year and why? So we thought about how to navigate this question. What does it mean? Is it a prospect that didn't break out but was expected to? Was it a player that didn't break out was expected to? The way that I viewed it was guys that got to the big leagues struggled more than maybe a lot of people were expecting and haven't been one of the best young players in baseball, but could turn into one of the best young players in baseball this year. So the example that I plucked was like Francisco Alvarez and Gabby Moreno, the catchers for the Diamondbacks and the Mets. Those guys, at this point, I think some prospect laden people would be saying, hey, they should be two of the top five catchers in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
Neither are there yet, but by the end of the year, we could absolutely be talking about both of them as being that person.
Who are you more confident in? Because Francisco just came back off injury, and Moreno he ended up turning in a nice year last year overall. He was banged up as well, but in 97 games he was a 2.5 win player, 107 WRC plus. But Moreno's been bad to start this year, 69 WRC plus. Again, still an incredible defender, so it's working in terms of being a positive asset, but he's not hitting. Who do you have more confidence in? Because Alvarez has turned himself into a phenomenal defender as well.
I think Alvarez, because Alvarez has that worst case scenario, three true outcome type of thing
Yeah.
where he could sell out for pop. And what was it? Eric Chavez said he couldn't sell out for pop anymore. What? He got away from whatever he was
Yeah, he
doing
needs
last year.
he needs to be more of a hitter.
He needs to be more of a hitter. I'm not sure about that. I think Gabby, he could just put the ball on the ground way too much to ever be a super productive hitter, but
Hmm.
Alvarez could fall back on being that, well, I know I'm going to hit you 25 homers even if I hit 210 and I'm going to be a
Yeah.
gold glove caliber defender.
And even if he's just an above average defender, if you hit 210 and you walk a little bit and you hit 20 to 25 home runs, you're going to be quite valuable. So, I mean, that's 100% why I agree. Like he's probably the sexier pick as well. Moreno, the value that he can bring in terms of limiting the running game and things like that is also just going to help him be valuable pretty much no matter what. But I agree with you. Like if he's not right, it's just going to be a lot of weak ground balls and things like that. And the reason why I've always loved Moreno as a prospect is that he hits the ball harder than he gets credit for. But at what point are we going to see that turn into not even just homers, just more doubles, more extra base hits? I look back to that World Series run that they made. He was crushing
He was
baseballs.
crushing. And it's never going to be a Brian Hayes conversation because
No.
Moreno is just a better hitter than that.
Yeah.
But it is like the hybrid conversation where, okay, like you provide a little bit of defensive value, but not as much as Alvarez, and you're not Brian Hayes, but you do have the same deficiencies.
I do think he's going to have a big finish to the year though. And in 97 games last year to be a 2.5 win player despite being banged up, I think if we see a full season from him And once he starts to get going here, and some of the batted ball data points towards him being a little bit unlucky, you're looking at like a 40 something point difference between his WOBA and his ex WOBA. Uh, this is a guy that could easily have a 4-win season. So, and I like the Posthype breakout
Yeah.
conversation because Moreno. I don't know if you're looking at it, but like, what would you guess his age is if you weren't just looking at it recently? I imagine you were because you called games with them in town.
Yeah, I mean, he was 24.
He just turned 25.
He just turned 25. Okay,
Like
like just turned meaning I probably saw him when he was 24.
he might have he might have turned 25 like in that series. I
No,
think.
that's right. I wished him a happy early birthday, I think. Hey, I either said happy early birthday or happy belated birthday, something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. Like that's a young guy. And then Alvarez is 23 for the entirety of the season.
Yeah.
So two
So,
guys that could, especially at the catching position,
yep.
continue to develop as this season progresses and as they get closer to 26, 27. We see that all the time with catchers. PCA is probably the most obvious answer, right? Like because he's
PCA
already
for
doing
sure,
it.
but I think PCA is already in the midst of like what that breakout looks like.
Hmm.
There were a couple other deeper cut ones that I had. I think people jump ship on Victor Scott way too soon.
Way too quick.
Way too soon. Victor Scott is closer to Chandler Simpson than anybody wants to give him credit for, and he's hitting some homers. He's not going to put bat on ball like Chandler Simpson will, and Simpson has a bit better plate discipline, but he can absolutely fly. He is as fast as Simpson. Simpson may be like a step quicker, but we
Yeah,
haven't seen
yeah.
that foot race.
And you also have a guy that is a better defender in center field
Yeah,
in Scott.
yeah. So I'm riding the Scott thing. I just saw him go deep in Cincinnati as well. Another guy, and I don't think he fits this criteria because he's like so far gone. I've been actually really encouraged by what Gavin Lux is doing to start the year in Cincinnati. I thought that was a really good fit for
Hmm.
him. But I'm not gonna like stamp, okay, he's that guy. The one that I am stamping on the mound is Shane Baz. If you haven't watched
Yep.
Baz yet this year, Baz is one of the better young pitchers in the game, and it just took a while because he was injured.
Yep. Yeah, and he just looks. There's something with the TJ guys, like not everybody, but
Yeah,
there's a. It's so hard to describe, and I know you could probably add to this, where it looks like all of a sudden something clicks, and it might just be physical, just feeling it, and all of a sudden it looks like they're just throwing free, where
yeah,
it's like almost like your arm was tight and now it's loose, and you just feel whippy and like you just feel like Jello in a good way.
yeah.
Whereas like you could just feel it rip off your fingers, and they just feel free and easy. And that's what I'm seeing with Boz again. Because when he was one of the top pitching prospects in baseball, it was just this slow, easy wind up and then just crazy arm speed and it's on you.
Yeah.
And it was so low effort. It just looked a little bit stiffer for a bit. And now he looks so free and easy.
Yeah.
And that is a guy that I do think people forget because the conversation was always like Shane Baz or Grayson Rodriguez, who's the best pitching prospect in baseball. And very quickly when they're not in front of you all the time and maybe not succeeding a ton right out of the gate, you kind of forget just how exciting those guys once were. And
Yeah.
I think we're seeing with Baz. I mean, you already have a 10 strikeout outing and an 11 strikeout outing, and the last time out against the Padres, 7 innings scoreless.
Yeah.
He's starting to become that guy. And again, another guy. He's not even 26 yet.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. And then I don't know how much I'm buying in terms of like him being a 4-win player or whatever it may be, but I do think we're seeing him become a good ball player, and it wasn't great last year. Sal Frelick, I
Mm-hmm.
think I feel like he kind of fits the bill of this conversation too. This was a first round pick. This is a
Yeah.
consensus top 100 prospect. And, maybe people that are more close to the central would say, oh, well, I don't think the hype ever fully died on him or whatever. But I don't know. I just felt like his name just stopped coming up. And we kind
You
of,
know what? He was clumped in with Quan as like guys that just swung a wet noodle. Like, oh, Frelick's never gonna hit the ball out, yada yada yada. Quan all of a sudden decided to start hitting the ball out. He might hit 30 homers this year. I'm kidding, but Quan's already what at 4 homers. But
yeah,
Frelick,
he's different. He's
yeah,
different for sure.
Quan is different. But Frelick was being clumped in with guys like Luis Ariz, honestly, who are going to make contact a lot, but it's not going anywhere. So how valuable is that truly? Well, the difference is Frelick's a freak athlete that can
Yep.
play a very good outfield,
Yep.
and I think it's a little bit more dynamic offensively too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think he's been playing all three spots, and he's trying to, I think, settle in. And I still think he's scraping the surface of what he ultimately can be as a defender,
Yeah,
because this is a guy that has moved around in his career. Remember, they stuck him at third at one point. I think he's even played a little bit of third already this year, which is crazy. I would love to just see him continue to get reps out there in the outfield, where I mean, this was a guy that was a good football player in high
yeah,
school, and just as you mentioned, is elite athlete. So that defense can come along even further. But just seeing the offensive side of things, and again, maybe there's some batted ball luck, but I
sure.
think there is just a clear improvement in the swing decisions, in the quality of contact, in the consistency of contact. That he looks like the guy that was he was a top 100 prospect, not because of the ceiling, because of the floor,
Yeah,
and the floor just being so high. It looks like he's finally settling into, I think, that solid, just bat to ball guy and good speed guy that was a top 100 prospect across the board.
of course. We're going to get to a pre-arb conversation in a moment. Before that, quick break. Okay, now we get away from the Discord questions and a reminder that you can join our Discord with the link in the episode description. But now we go to Twitter. We pulled 2 Twitter questions and 2 Instagram questions to wrap. Question comes from at Skylar Clifton on X. Who are some of the young guys who should be up next for a pre-arb extension? It's kind of all encompassing. There are a couple of guys that have already gotten one so far this year. Jackson Merrill was the notable one. He was already locked up long term on a pre-arb deal. Where did you go? Did you go guys that haven't debuted, or did you kind of spray the board a little bit?
I sprayed the board a little bit because I think there's some of the almost easier candidates are the guys that won't cost $150 million.
Mm-hmm.
Like and we saw the Campbell deal just not being
Right.
crazy expensive. So those are the ones that I think can get done a little bit
So
easier. And
who costs $100 million? Obviously, Skeens costs 300 at this point, and
yeah,
they're not going to do it.
yeah. Let me. So also, by the way, I thought of another post type breakout, Max
Who?
Meyer.
Meyer. Yeah, Meyer's a
Like
great
shame
shot.
on us, right? Because like that's
Yeah.
a top five pick and all the talent in the world. Of course, TJ played a part in that, but still, I had to shout him out because he looks like that guy.
Yeah.
But in terms of like who could be that, so you want to start with like the big money
So
guys?
the big ticket guys that I thought of, the ones that I didn't even write down, Skeens, Ellie, and Gunner. I did not write down those 3 guys.
Yeah, I mean, the ship sailed. You're not going to be able to do that unless it's like a Julio deal with less guardrails,
Yeah,
where like the probability is high for them to achieve all of those scalable aspects of the contract.
right. 2 guys that I think would be signing 9-figure pre-arb extensions, James Wood in Washington,
Yep. Hmm.
PCA.
I think PCA's probably got to do it for another month or two, just because he's so aggressive and has the history of just volatility offensively.
Yeah.
But the glove being so freaking good, and the speed and it's the guy that sells jerseys, man. We talk about what was the most worn jersey outside of the Japanese players. It was PCA when
They
they
were
played
chanting
that
his name
series
in the
out in Japan.
Tokyo Dome, man.
Yeah, so I think that's a no brainer. And then circling back to Willier, he's not a nine-figure guy, but that's a guy that I think you look at,
Yeah.
because we talked about this. Like, what are the criteria that I think make a good pre-arb candidate? I think it's either, well, I think one is just the superstar player that you're hoping to potentially save yourself or really elongate the control that you have, because inevitably for a lot of these teams you're going to lose them to free agency because you're not going to be able to outbid the big market teams. But also it's for some of the cheaper ones, relatively speaking, it's okay, what's kind of the 25th percentile outcome for this player too?
Hmm.
Because you're obviously looking to save money in the 75th percentile outcome, but also like if it doesn't totally work out, could I get burned? And that's why even Rafaela, which it may not look like the best deal in the world, you can't get totally burned because you can play an elite center field and even plug in at short if you really need it. Willier, like, this is a guy that's going to play a good corner outfield. He's going to run into enough home runs where I think he's going to give you some value there. And he just hits the ball hard and he walks a ton. So, like, Willier Abreu for me is another guy. I don't think it would be north of 70 million or whatever, but
I don't think
I,
so.
I think that's a guy that you could feel pretty comfortable giving that pre-arb extension to, especially as he just continues to look better. I think seeing him struggle in the second half last year and
Yeah.
then come back this year and have a great start to the season almost makes me more confident in him. I mean, he's on pace to shatter last year's home run total of 15.
I think Willier is a great, like, kind of low to mid level pre-arb
Mm-hmm.
extension shout. Tell me if this guy is more expensive or cheaper than Willier Abreu. Austin Wells, the Yankees. I think Wells could be a slam dunk pre-arb candidate just to buy out 2 years of free agency. The Yankees, for the first time since Posada, have a catcher that
Yeah,
they can trust to play every day. I think
yeah,
there's something calming about that. And I think the Steinbrenner name could be very happy with that. And Brian Cashman could say, you know what? Like, we got our guy. Let's not look
yeah.
any further right now. Austin Wells, come on down. You're the Yankee backstop for the next 7, 8 years, whatever you want to give him.
Based on catching cost precedent, I think he'd be cheaper, a little bit
I
cheaper.
think a little cheaper.
Yeah, but I think that's a good one. Here's another interesting one for you, and it's not a position that you generally want to do it at, but I think about just where they're at and where they want to be. Michael Bush with the Cubs, you gave up a lot for him,
Yeah.
I'll never say that was a bad trade. No matter how good Zaire Hope and Jackson Ferris end up being, I'll never call that a bad trade. Just so it goes.
They got a
But
borderline all-star first baseman out of this.
who looks as good as ever, and he's a great, I think at least a solid defender. I feel like that could be an interesting cheap because it's first base.
Yeah.
He hasn't been a great defender this year, but he was good last year. He's crushing the ball. He's striking out less than ever. It may be a little bit riskier, but that's a guy that at 27 years old, you could probably buy out a couple extra years for relatively cheap. But I think James Wood is the perfect candidate in terms of who he is as a player. The fact that he got paid, but it wasn't like he was a top 10 pick. The Nationals have the money to do it, right? They've cleared up so much off the books. They need some continuity here. And there's really no question about how talented this guy is. So it's just a matter of, does he become an MVP candidate, or is he just a really good speed and power guy for a long time? I don't really see a scenario where you're getting burned there.
I don't think
And
so.
for the Nats, it makes all the sense in the world. A team that lost Harper, that lost Soto, and it was too late by the time they tried to make him the offers, right?
How
It
about
just
Turner? Yeah.
lost, traded Turner because they knew they weren't going to keep him. You have satisfied or figured out the Strasburg situation. So that money's at least going to be accounted for.
Yeah.
And Corbin's off the books. And I think for a franchise that you can look at and say, wow, they've lost like multiple Hall of Famers here. This is the spot to do it. And they've got the money to be able to do it. They've been waiting for the right time to spend. Here's a perfect spot. And I think that would help endear free agents who they should be able to start signing coming out after this year, especially with Cruz looking better and this core that can be so exciting.
Yeah. I think you've ID'd the guy that can be the selling point to free agents. I'm with you. Where the idea of Wood and Cruz probably sold Josh Bell and Paul DeYoung this offseason, you want to punch a bit higher than that. What's going to
Especially
make
if you're an arm, like,
For
you know,
sure.
and
Like,
you're
what's
signing
going
a
to make
5-year
Michael
deal.
King? Yeah, what's going to make Michael King want to be a Washington National?
Yep.
Well, if you know James Wood's going to be there for 10, okay, I'll be there for 6. Like,
Yep.
what's going to make Zach Gallen want to team up with Michael King in D.C.? I'm
Yep.
thinking about that. And it's paying Wood and having Cruz and Abrams continue to tick up.
Yep. I think that's the biggest no-brainer. And then I'm trying to think on the prospect front. Like, is there
So,
really somebody out there that you would give a pre-arb deal to?
so
Is
Roman's the only one that I
Roman's
would
the
do.
only one, and he's probably going to say no.
Yeah, like Roman's at the point where he could say no. There are a couple other big leaguers that, I was looking at. Your guy Neto, I think Neto could make a lot of sense for the
Such
Angels
a
if
good
they love
candidate.
spending.
Yep. And he wouldn't be as expensive, I think,
No.
and he'd probably, whatever it would be a steal.
And
Uh,
two cheap ones, like two that we might forget to talk about on the Just Baseball show if they happened. Elliot Ramos at this point, like why wouldn't the Giants just extend? Like he clearly figured something out in San Francisco. Just ride this high and give him a 5-year deal.
if it's cheap enough, yes,
It's
I would
like
do that.
5 for 30. Would you do 5 for 30
Yeah.
for Ramos?
Yeah, I would. You're not going to get burned on that.
No.
He's going to run into enough power.
And the other one, Emmanuel Clasé's on an extension right now, and it was a cheap extension. Could you just throw Cade Smith a 7-year deal right now if you're Cleveland? They like doing
Would you
stuff like that.
would you be a little jaded after, looking? I mean, it's still so cheap for Class A that I don't even think you're upset about it still. But would you be a little bit worried after the trend of Class A over the last 6 months?
No, because Class A could absolutely get it back in the next week, and we could be looking at Class A as still one of the best relievers in baseball. And even coming into this year with the postseason struggles, we were talking about this guy being literally the best and it not
Yeah.
being close.
Well, and if he's 60% of what he was last year, it's still a good deal.
Yeah.
So, I was trying to think of one other name because pitchers are tough too. You don't really usually want to go down that route in general. Uh, but it's funny because the timing is kind of weird given the Murphy situation. But with Drake Baldwin and just the way the Braves operate, Baldwin is. I've already seen enough. Like I thought he was the safest, catching prospect you really had in the minors. That's why we ranked him as a top 25 prospect preseason. Actually, he was top 20 preseason. He was number 17 for us on the top 100 list. And I know reps haven't been there totally every day for him, but I mean, already we've seen him just look really comfortable at the big league level. And even despite the slow start where he was hitting balls at everybody at all times, he's played 17 games this year. He's a 105 WRC plus, 327 WOBA, 353 X WOBA, and he's defending well. Uh, he's just I think, a guaranteed solid catcher for a long time. And it's a guy that hit a $600,000 signing bonus. So he's a third round pick. I think I think he'd love to have some guaranteed earnings. That's what the Christian Campbell conversation too. People are like, oh, it was so cheap. Well, yeah, the guy signed for like $500,000, I think.
Yeah.
So, which is a lot of money, but like in the grand scheme, not enough. So I think that's a guy. It may not make a ton of sense right now, but that might be why you can actually pull it off. I felt like that might be a good candidate as well.
I like that shout, and it takes us into our next question. This comes to us from Levi G1423 on X. Can you predict the best players at each position in 2030? We're going to kind of go rapid fire around the diamond, but I had Drake Baldwin written down for being the best
Did
catcher
you?
in baseball in the next 5 years. I look at everybody else. Alvarez, there's a shot. Moreno, I think that shot is dwindling.
Yeah.
The current catchers right now, William Contreras is going to be 32. Cal Raleigh is going to be 33, 34. Adley's going to be 30. So then I go to the prospects and I look at Dalton Rushing. Where's he going to be? I don't even know if he's going to be a Dodger at that point. Basayo could be a first baseman. I look at the Caros. I don't know. Teal, no. How about Baldwin? Yeah, I like it. So based on process of elimination, I settled on Drake Baldwin being the best catcher in baseball in 2030.
I don't mind that shout. I think it's possible. It's definitely possible. I wonder, like, I think Cal Raleigh might still just be doing it though.
He's
Like
he's going to be 34.
34.
I think he's 30. I think he's what? He's 29 right now. So in 5 years.
Like, I think if I had to give an answer, I'd
28
bet
right
on.
now. He'll be 33.
I think I'd go Cal Raleigh.
Okay.
But if I had, for the sake of the argument, go different direction, what William will be what 30.
William will be 32.
I think Raleigh or William are the best choices still because I still think they're going to be doing it at that age. Though, if I had to pick someone beyond those guys, I do think Baldwin has a higher ceiling than Austin Wells. I think Baldwin has a higher ceiling than, yeah, pretty much all the other guys we're talking about here. And Moreno, I think the only guy that he doesn't have a higher ceiling than is Alvarez. But Alvarez, you just have the volatility there.
Yeah.
I think Alvarez is a good shout though too. But the safest pick of the guys that aren't already at the top, I do think would probably be Drake Baldwin, as he's playing every day and just continuing to develop, and especially with the success that the Braves have had with developing backstops.
Yeah. Do you have the rest of yours written down?
Yeah.
Because we can just kind of go rapid fire.
Yeah,
First base, who you got?
Vladdy.
I still have Vladdy, yes. So
Yeah.
we agree on that. Second base,
Second base was tough. I'm curious what you had.
Kevin McGonigal.
Oh, that's actually a great answer. I had either Christian Campbell
Okay.
or this is the only one I'm gonna get cute with, or Jesus Mate.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Just
Mate,
because and this isn't me trying to be cute and just like hype up a prospect. Like it's pretty much the only prospect I'm going to mention on here. Just because second base is the way that it is, I think Made is going to move off of short. And if you haven't seen what he's doing already this year, it, I mean, if you listen to the show, you know how excited I am about Jesus Made and have been for a year now. I don't think I accounted for this kind of production in low A already. He is a freak. He's an absolute freak. He's not even 18 yet.
Yeah. I understand where you're coming from, and he'll be 23 at the time. So I could see it. I went McGonigal because he looks like a second baseman playing shortstop right now when he's healthy, and you've lauded the bat to ball abilities. He's a top 10 prospect in baseball right now. He's going to move off of short. He's going to play second, and I think that offensive profile at second base, knowing that he's going to be a good defensive second baseman,
Oh yeah,
that gave me some safety there.
I love that pick too because
Cool.
I mean he's one of my favorite bats in a long time. But you think about that environment that he's going to be hitting in.
Yeah.
Ton of space in the gaps. He's all fields. The power is still budding. He needs to get healthy. He sprained his ankle, I think. But
Yeah.
that is probably as safe of a pick as you could have because I almost think he's a guarantee if he's playing second base to be top 5 at the position in the next 5 years for sure.
Yeah. Shortstop, easy. I went Bobby Witt.
I went Maximo Acosta.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a great
Bobby
shot.
Witt
He's hitting well over 300 in Jacksonville right now.
Yeah, Bobby Witt's the layup.
Witt's the layup. Ellie's there. Gunner's there. The shortstop position.
Yeah, I guess it's not a complete
hand.
layup if you believe that Ellie could take another leap, but
Sure.
Bobby Witt is like actually the perfect baseball player.
Yeah, he is. Third base. Where are you at?
Junior Caminero is where I
Same.
went there.
I
didn't
Caminero.
feel 100% confident in it. Like, I think there's a real scenario where a prospect could insert themselves in that conversation.
So
I love
Smith was
Caminero.
the name. Cam Smith was the name that came to mind for me as a runner-up. Cam Smith. Also, Austin Riley might still be hitting at that point.
Yeah, he might get himself like really, really going again. And then the one other just prospect shout, and again, I had Caminero here, but
Yeah.
I think Sebastian Walcott moves off of short.
Yeah.
And this kid is off the charts as well. So, and we're talking about, I think 70 power. The hit is just getting better and better. He doesn't chase. He's putting up numbers in the Rangers org as a 19-year-old in Double A. So you look at it from that lens, like that's definitely a guy. He just turned 19. That's definitely a guy that could be in that conversation. But I'm not gonna thrust a newly turned 19-year-old who's still getting it going in Double A fully over Junior Caminero, who had some of the best raw power in the minor leagues and is still trying to fully get his footing at the big league level. But I think if he it's kind of the Vladdy conversation with Junior, where the bat speed is off the charts. There's some moving parts, and sometimes he gets a little out of whack and ends up putting the ball on the ground too much. But he's one little adjustment away from potentially just putting together just absurd numbers. So I think Caminero is the best pick there.
Cool. Outfield, I felt really bad not including Juan Soto, Kyle Tucker, Fernando Tatis, Jackson Merrill. I felt bad not including those guys. I also felt a little bad not including Roman Anthony. But the three that I went with, Corbin Carroll, James Wood.
Oh,
what he's doing right now, dude, like
I know.
Just random 111 golf shots, like shoelace high that he's sending out to left center. He could hit 50 homers in a given season.
He could.
So Wood, Carroll, and I'm drunk on Chorio right now. I love watching him play baseball.
Okay, so you're definitely betting on the young guys just continuing to progress.
Yeah, and then Carroll, I'm just buying MVP.
Yeah, I've got Soto still, just because
he's Soto.
He's Soto. Corbin. And then this is where it was tough for me because I think Tucker is going to still be phenomenal in 5 years. But with what Fernando Tatis Jr. is doing this year, and looking like I love the swing adjustment. And I know we omitted him in the all May team. All April team.
That's
we've been
so
hearing
sad. How can you do that?
I mean, that's a whole thing. I couldn't believe the comments. People were up in arms. I understand that was probably a bad omission, but Tatis, I think he's got to be the guy. He's also back to defending at like an elite level again in right field. So what, he'll be 31.
Yeah.
He'll probably still be playing out of his freaking mind. He might even be playing his best baseball at that point. Is the approach continues to get better, and he learns more about how guys are going to go after him. So I go Tatis as the third.
Cool. Okay. And then pitchers, I've stood by this. I'll continue to stand by it. I think the three guys that run the league for the next decade, Paul Skeens, Yuri Perez in Miami, Andrew Painter in Philly. Those are my three.
I went Skeens. I still think Scooble might just be running shit.
I get it.
And then Garrett Crochet.
Sure. Yeah, that's
I
a good
love
shout.
the young guys, but I
I
I
just think about pitching age too. 102 from Crochet on the other side of 30 might be 98.
it could be. And he might just continue to evolve and still be disgusting. So I Yuri is tough to overlook in this case. Really hard, really tough omission. But Crochet still being just pretty much 30, just like and maybe just turning 31. I like his chances. Scooble's probably the one I'm the most nervous about, given some of the
Yeah.
injury history, and he's going to be closer to 33.
Yeah.
That's where I could see maybe a Painter, one of these younger guys, showing it. But we talk about it with prospects all the time. Sometimes these guys are just elite prospects, and they end up just being really good twos,
Yeah.
and it's like
Sure.
shit. So I'll
And
I'll stick with the trio.
that's where I'm starting to get with Job. Like the
Yeah,
fastball's just nobody's swinging and missing at the fastball right now, and I'm like, okay, you could be an awesome two, but is there an ace in there? Time will tell.
and he's been great. Like the last outing wasn't fantastic against the Astros, but he's really kind of settled in and looking like that budding young good too.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's not in that conversation, I don't think, because there's not quite enough fastball whiff there.
Yeah.
Fastball whiff is how you get there for the most part.
Right. And I think Painter, Yuri, and Skeens can absolutely be there with it. Did
Yep.
you have a reliever or no? I didn't have a reliever.
Reliever's so tough because it's so volatile.
Yeah, I
But
just didn't have one.
I thought like as long as his arms attached to his body, like Mason Miller,
Sure, yeah.
I he'll be 31. Sure, there's just the arm talent. I think it might be unmatched. So
How old is Chapman going to be at that point? Because I'll still pick
I was thinking
Chapman.
about that. Like if he was still pitching at the peak of his abilities, I'd be like, yeah, maybe he still could get there. But Chapman, I think I'd bet on him still being what we're seeing now in 5 years.
Yeah,
But
still throwing 105 at 42
yeah,
years old.
yeah. I don't know
Generational
if there's
talent.
another option there.
I don't think there is. Martinez, maybe. Uh,
Martinez could be a good
I
answer.
think Kirkering is still ticking up. Like, I
Yeah,
think Kirkering is absolutely disgusting.
yeah.
So
And
we'll
then
see.
yeah, I don't think DH we didn't really even do,
No,
but
no.
that could
Jordan.
yeah,
Give me Jordan. He's
yeah,
going to hit forever.
yeah.
They'll probably Otani, too. We're 6 years into that deal at that point. Okay, two more questions. This one really easy in our two Instagram questions. Kyle Stelter asked, who is Luis Robert Jr. at this point? It's a
You
great
tell
question,
me.
Kyle. That's a really good question. I was thinking, I was looking at his contract structure. He's got a club option at $8.3 million next year for the White Sox. The White Sox are absolutely picking that up. But say they didn't. What does he sign? A 1 year, $10 million deal?
He probably gets more than that on a 1 year, but
So I have no idea what he is.
I don't know either. It'll be literally one of those situations where it's like truly and the value is in the eyes
Of the
of the
beholder. Yeah.
consumer. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
sure.
where it's just whatever the market sets at. We don't even know what it's going to set at, right? Like, I that's where we're at here. He is providing some value on the base paths. He is defending all right and those things, but I mean he's hitting 170.
Yeah.
So he's been better of late. I don't know who he is
I don't
really
either.
because the further away we get from it here, I don't know how much more confidence I have, or I didn't, not more. I don't know how, if I have any confidence that he's going to ever be that Luis Robert that we saw. And what year was that now? I can't even remember.
23? I think it was 23.
23 Robert. I don't know. Especially if he doesn't do it this year. I don't know.
I need to see him play a month in a uniform that isn't a White Sox uniform. I just need to know if this is Luis Robert right now or if this is a team that's tracking for 40 wins again.
And that's the thing is, he seems pretty checked out a lot of the games I'm watching, and I get it. Like he's just been kind of stuck there. The approach is not as egregiously
Egregious.
bad. Yeah, like he's cut the chase actually down to 29%, which is the first time in his entire big league career that his chase has been below 35%. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that is encouraging. But then why is that not resulting in better numbers offensively? His whiff is down. Like, why is he not producing?
Yeah.
He's still hitting the ball hard. So maybe there's better results on the way. But right now, in terms of who he is, I think he's one of baseball's most frustrating players. And
Yeah.
if I'm trying to define it at this point, I think it's a glove first like a glove first center fielder
That's
until
crazy.
proven otherwise. A
It's
glove first center
crazy.
fielder who's going to run into some home runs and give you some value on the base paths.
So he's a glorified Jose Siri.
Yeah, yeah.
That's crazy.
What is he doing that's different than Jose Siri?
I don't know. I guess not striking out 40% of the
Yeah,
time.
it's the
That's
only 31%.
yeah, that's oh my gosh. Like that. That's like a gut check for so many people. That's a gut check for me. Just to realize that he's a slightly better version of Jose Siri right now.
With the potential to be better than that. But
With the
for
potential
me,
to be Buxton. He's somewhere in between Byron Buxton and Jose Siri right now.
yeah, I think that's the perfect way of describing it.
Man, that's really unfortunate. Okay,
Yeah.
let's end on a positive note here. Last question has to do with aces because I brought something up on the Tuesday show. Jackson Job, not that Jackson Job, on Instagram asked, based on Tuesday's episode, who are the current aces in Major League Baseball? Peter was effectively making the argument that there are 30. Like every
No.
guy that leads a rotation is an ace. And I
Mm-mm.
pushed back. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, I think there are only about 15 aces in Major League Baseball right now.
If
And
that.
if that, and I define ace as if this guy's on the mound for my team, I feel really good about winning a 1-0 game.
Yeah.
How
I
many
look at it
people
like
can do that? Yeah.
it's the number one starter on, to me, a top 10 rotation. I've actually talked about this with scouts before, and like because just because that word can get used in write-ups and stuff like that. And I was
Yeah.
just, yeah, thinking about it and trying to get some perspective, because like how many guys should I say could have ace upside? And we talked about it with the top 100 list. Like there's stretches where nobody on the top 100 list has is ace up, or maybe one or two guys
Yeah.
um, that you're even projecting as an ace. The most frequent answer I got was that at any given time, evaluators feel like there's about 10 to 12 players that could be qualified as an ace in Major League Baseball.
Okay. I
I
reached a
think,
little bit on some.
yeah,
There are some guys that have kind of been grandfathered into acehood. Like I think about Sandy
Ace
Alcantara.
Hood,
Ace Hood. Ace Hood. Yeah, there we go. But like
Broward
his
County,
for
underrated catalog, I
for
would
Ace
say.
Hood.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's two words. One word, Ace Hood. I think about guys that have kind of been grandfathered into that. Sale has been grandfathered in. I think Sale is a fringe ace at this point right now. Sandy Alcantara of the Marlins has been grandfathered into acehood. You know, you always say the ace of the Marlins, and that's absolutely true. But right now, he's not pitching like one. So I think ace. I think that term is actually a bit more malleable
Yeah.
than a lot of people will give it credit for. I think there are a couple aces on the injured list right now. To be honest, like Strider on the IL, Strider's an ace. Garrett Cole is an ace. I think McClanahan is an ace when he's on the mound. So those are the guys that I kind of give acehood to.
Yeah. And I agree with that at the peak of their powers. But if I'm going into this year and saying like, are these guys going to be aces? Like, are they going to
Yeah.
pitch as aces? I don't know if the answer would be yes.
Okay.
Like, do you look at Garrett Cole when he comes back next year at some point and say like he's going to pitch like a top 10 pitcher in the game?
I do just because he's like earned that level of respect from me,
Yeah,
I think.
that's fair. That's fair. There are some grandfathered in aces, I
Yeah.
guess, which is an interesting wrinkle in the
Right.
conversation.
So
But aside from the
Sale,
guys that are
Sandy, Cole.
grandfathered in,
Yeah. Sale, Sandy, Cole are the ones that are kind of grandfathered into me.
and then Wheeler's grandfathered in, but he's still doing it
But
as
he's
an
still
ace.
there. So I'm just going to run you through my list. And I think I'm 15 deep right now. And you just say yes or no.
Okay.
Skeens,
Yeah, he's an ace.
Scooble,
Yeah.
Crochet,
Yep.
Wheeler,
Yep.
Yamamoto.
He's getting there. I don't think he's there yet.
Interesting. I say yes, he's there.
I don't I think he will be.
Okay.
Need a little more.
How about Framber Valdez and Logan Webb?
Logan Webb, yes, because he takes the ball every fifth day and he's gonna throw you a shitload of innings. Fromber, he's
Framber's
got to
coming
be
off
one of the.
170 innings at a 2.9.
Yeah, I think he's got a 4 this year. He's through 4 or 5. Yeah, he's an ace.
He's an ace.
He's got to be the softest ace though,
Yeah.
of the ones so far.
How about Reagan's?
Like
No?
he pitched like it last year. Like, mm, it's tough.
It's tough. He's fringe.
He's. I'm gonna say no. Like
Okay.
I love him, but no. I think he's a really good pitcher.
Where are you at on DeGrom? Is he just grandfathered into acehood?
He might be grandfathered in, and he might be all the way back. Not all the
Okay.
way, but he might be back. So I'll
Uh,
I'll, I'll give I'll give him the nod.
are you still calling Sale an ace, or is he grandfathered in?
He's grandfathered in.
Okay. Couple other names that intrigued me. Max Fried,
Damn, he's pitching like it, isn't he?
pitching like it.
But I would say the way I look at it too is like if you plugged these guys into the other 29 rotations, they need to pretty much be the number
The,
one or
or a
one
co
B,
one. Yeah.
co one in every other rotation.
Yeah.
Freed, I think, is there with a 2.48 in 2022, and when he's healthy, a 2.55 in 2023, and yeah, I would say Freed's going to be a co ace in a
Agreed.
lot, pretty much every other rotation.
How about Hunter Green?
No,
Not
I
yet.
love him, but no, he could get there, but
I
not
think he's
yet.
close. I think he's
There's
very
there's a
close.
lot of rotations still where like I'm taking the like proven commodity a little bit more
Got you.
as the one, and he's just the elite two.
Gotcha. Couple other names that jump out to me. Corbin Burns, is he still there?
Ugh, uh, I don't know. What do you think?
I leaned yes.
I think there's a few rotations where he's comfortably flanking the top guy.
Wow. Yeah.
Aces is like I
Ace
think
is
it's a
tough.
really selective term,
Yeah.
but he might be a little grandfathered in, as crazy as that sounds,
No,
because
I think so.
2.43, 2.94. I'm going ERA by year, 3.39, 2.92. So he's. I think he still earns that though. I think you give him the benefit of the doubt, given
And
how good he's been in the past.
and two guys that I have really close and maybe in. Logan Gilbert in Seattle, and Michael King in San Diego.
King is really freaking good.
I think those guys are both getting close. I lean Gilbert over King.
Gilbert, I think, is on his way. I think by midseason could pretty much be in that
Well,
conversation.
well, forearm. We'll see.
Yeah, that's the problem. See, it depends on how much time he misses. King, he pitches like it sometimes,
But we're only a year and a half into this thing.
and there's like he has some of the best starts you'll see, and then there's some rough ones mixed in there. I, j- I don't know if there's something about even though the numbers are probably on par with a lot of other guys, there's just something just shy of ace hood for me, I think.
Yeah. So conservatively, we're saying Scooble, Skeens, Crochet, Wheeler, Freed, we say yes. Webb and Fromber, we say yes. DeGrom is 8. Sale is 9. Cole Sandy is 10, 11. Yamamoto, I am going to throw in there and say 12.
And I don't like this, even though I'm the one that was like
And
giving
Burns their
Framber all
teeth
the
are.
praise and
Yeah.
making the case for him. Like, I don't trust him like I trust these other guys, though. And that might be just a me thing. And
I don't
it
think I
like
trust Webb like I trust these guys. And I think that's just like the
ace is in
sinker
the eye of the
bias.
beholder.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's just something about like when you give that guy the ball in a playoff game, you either have the advantage or you're matching their perceived
Yeah.
advantage. And I'd say you got to have the advantage almost 95% of the time when that guy's on the bump. And I don't know if I feel that way about Framber. I don't know if I quite feel that way about Webb, as solid as he is as like a regular season valuable pitcher.
Yeah. So, dude, it's a
Interesting
really
conversation.
interesting
I know
thought
people will probably
exercise.
have takes all over on that, and
Yeah, give us
happy.
the
I want
takes
to
in
hear
YouTube.
those.
Yeah,
Yeah,
give us
let
the
us
takes in
know.
the YouTube comments and wherever. In our Discord, again, like we want to hear all of that. So that's what we got. That's your Friday mailbag for you. And this was awesome. You got anything else?
That's it for me. I'm
Cool.
looking forward to giving you my F1 recap.
Yeah,
see
that'd be great.
see what I thought of that. I'll be honest. I'll try to go in with an open mind.
Ace Hood in
But
the Miami Grand Prix wins.
Ace Hood might be there.
Yeah, he might actually. So there we go. All right, folks. Have a great weekend. We will talk to you next week.